Welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review, in fact the very last of 2019, as in today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the fourth release from the Doctor Who spin-off series, The War Master, starring the one and only Jacobi as the Master from the Time War, in a rather chaotic and explosive box set, which is of course anti-Genesis, but let's face it, what War Master box set isn't chaotic and explosive, and they've certainly left one of the most exciting and timey-wimey releases until last for 2019. So for those of you that have watched my previous The War Master box set reviews, for those of you that haven't, I highly recommend going and checking them out, because this series has been absolutely brilliant. I absolutely adore it. This is a very similar case to that of Jago and Lightfoot, where I just enjoy every single release that comes out from this series. The quality seems to up every single time, and each story always has something to offer, and I think that if you are looking for somewhere to get into Big Finish that isn't necessarily just directly Doctor Who featured adventures, then The War Master is definitely a route to go down. As I say, I've absolutely loved it, and if you are considering delving into this series, then go and check out the previous reviews that I have done, because I've been reviewing this series since its very beginning, and each and every box set has failed to disappoint, and this one is no different. It is naturally a series that, if anything, has in fact taken it up a notch, because we have Anti-Genesis relating to the Daleks, which is of course a box set that is pretty much a tribute to one of Doctor Who's most notorious stories, Genesis of the Daleks from 1975, with of course the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker. And this series is one that is almost a tribute to that story, celebrating the Daleks, but also at the same time taking it back to basics and actually kind of illustrating why the Daleks and the Master are so iconic when it comes to the Doctor Who universe. So as always, in the description below there will of course be the link to go and buy this release from the Big Finish website. It is currently available to order now. The physical box set is £22.99 and the download version is £19.99. It will remain exclusive to the Big Finish website up until the end of February 2020, where it will then be available to be purchased from other external retailers at a slightly higher price. So naturally, if you like what you hear throughout this review, which I hope you do, then I certainly recommend buying this release as soon as possible in order to save a little bit of money. And naturally, as always, there is also the story details and technical information, as well as the gorgeous cover, all of which are available to look at on the Big Finish website, as well as the rather brilliant trailer, which is available to watch on the official Doctor Who and Big Finish YouTube channels. However, of course, at the minute, it is of course the run-up to Christmas, so this is kind of a very early Christmas present. However, more importantly, I'm in fact reviewing this release on my birthday, so I thought that I would get rid of the tea for one review, and in fact get a little bit of gin instead, because hey, it's a celebratory occasion, it's my birthday, and it's Jacobi. What is not to like? It's certainly celebrating in style. So taking a look at how this box set plays out, it is in fact a rather similar style to that of the second War Master box set, where as opposed to it being singular adventures, this is one big massive cinematic story. So we do have some different chapters in there, written by two different writers. However, the overall story is in fact one big massive epic. So the opening part is From the Flames, as written by none other than Nicholas Briggs. The second episode is The Master's Dalek Plan, as written by Alan Barnes. The third episode is Shockwave, as written by Alan Barnes once again, and the fourth and final story is He Who Wins, as written by Nicholas Briggs. So as it does of course suggest, we have two writers on this box set who are kind of leading the entire story itself, and the main plot I do believe was in fact one that was originally created by Nicholas Briggs, and due to us only having two writers, it does indeed feel like one big massive story. You can't really tell, where you do of course have the different characters interlocking throughout. It is incredibly consistent. You can't tell that it is two different writers doing different things. They both have a very similar style, and I think that they both contribute something very nice to the scripts. And of course, taking a look at the very talented production team that are working on this release, the script editors are Scott Handcock and Nicholas Briggs. The cover art has been created by Tom Newson, and it's one of the best cover arts that I have in fact seen on a Big Finish release for a very long time. The director, as per usual, is Scott Handcock. The music has been created by Robert Harvey. The producer is Scott Handcock. The theme music has been created by Lon Morris. And of course, the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haig Ellery. Now, I'd just like to point out the sound design and music for this release. As I was saying, it's been created by Robert Harvey along with sound design from Richard Fox at Fox Yearson Studios, and it is absolutely flawless once again. I think that the War Master series always has something about it when it comes to the music and sound design where it's just simply absolutely phenomenal, and this box set is no different. I was listening to it just before this review, but do a music suit on the behind the scenes, and it is really nice just to listen to. It creates a lovely atmosphere throughout this story, some great suspense and dramatic moments, but also some really lovely harkbacks to the previous music used throughout the War Master series. There's just something wonderfully haunting about it, and it is by far some of the best soundtracks I have in fact once again heard on a Big Finish box set in a very long time. So delving straight into the story itself and taking a look at the characters as well as the actual plot, I'm going to try my best to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, although that is kind of impossible. So I will say there will be mild references to the actual plot itself. I'm not going to keep it entirely spoiler-free because that is just pointless at the end of the day, because that would mean I couldn't say anything about the actual plot. So do be warned, if you want to go into this release completely not knowing anything, then do not watch the review. But yeah, maybe come back to it after. Who knows if you do actually care about my opinion about the actual story itself. But as for the actual characters, we have of course Derek Jacobi as the War Master, who is now my favourite incarnation of a Master of all time. He is absolutely incredible. He is a brilliant balance between an absolute psycho, but at the same time a really admirable character, because he is a character that, yes, is evil, yes, he's quite demonic, but at the same time you are rooting for him to win. I think that is always very unusual about a series where the main protagonist, or antagonist I suppose, is in fact the main character himself, being the Master. Normally is the Doctor being the main focus, and the Master is someone that is coming in to disrupt. But this series is focused around the War Master himself, and basically about how much of a lunatic he is, and destroying things and causing chaos, and that is surely seen throughout this release, going back in time to the beginning, seeing the genesis of the Daleks, and contorting that to his own ways. And we have some rather lovely scenes throughout this series that really highlight the sheer power and intelligence and essentially the reason why he deserves to be one of the best incarnations of the Master of all time. As I've always said, I think in all of the reviews, it was an absolute crime to not see more of Derek Jacobi within the actual televised series itself, because he is simply absolutely flawless at acting, and it is clear that he does in fact like the role, and he enjoys recording for Big Finish, and he's just so much fun to listen to. I could listen to his incarnation of the Master forever, because he's so brilliant and so captivating and so evil. There's a little bit of a warning for this review, because naturally due to this series being set within the Time War, I would in fact say that this box set is a little bit more complex in narrative compared to the other box sets that have been released previously within this series, because we have more direct involvement of Gallifrey. Of course we have Sean Calson coming over as Narvin, of course from the Gallifrey series, which is a really lovely inclusion, along with Pippa Bennett-Warner coming over as the President of Gallifrey, and there is certain aspects of this story, especially within episode 1, that do make it feel a lot more like an episode of Gallifrey, because we have the Gallifreyan hierarchy, different people coming over from the Gallifreyan High Council, and generally just Gallifrey as a whole, making this feel very much like a political Time War drama, as opposed to the War Master series where Derek Jacobi is normally the main focus. And that is not to say it's a bad thing, it is certainly a very nice take, and it is good to see that this version of the Master is interacting with the Time Lords during the Time War, which is something that we don't necessarily get to see too much of with, say, the War Master within the heart of the Time War itself. So it is nice that they're bringing in the other series within Doctor Who, and of course you do not need to know Narvin beforehand in order to listen to this series. It is a very good jumping on point, and you are introduced to him through the eyes of Nicholas Briggs and Alan Barnes, and they write him equally throughout all 4 parts incredibly well. Due to it being a part of the Time War, the actual narrative is a little bit all over the place, and that is not a criticism of the actual plot itself. It is all over the place because it is a part of the Time War. The timelines are weaving all over. We have different sequences of events, different characters changing in personality and background here and there and all over the place, meaning that at times, especially within the audio drama format, that can be quite hard to visualise, especially within episodes 3 and episodes 4. However, for the most part it eases you into that quite well. The opening 2 stories are pretty straightforward, However, it is that episode 3 and the main climax itself within 4 that are a little bit all over the place, and as I say, very timey-wimey, which is something that you can come to expect. So if you are a new listener, maybe listen to some of the previous box sets from the War Master before going into this one, because you don't really need to listen to them in any order. You can start with any box set that you want. Only the Good is a very good starting point because it is technically separate adventures with a plot arc running throughout, and it is just generally a flawless box set really, and I recommend any of them because they are equally or just as good. Episode 1 from the Flames does a very good job of introducing the actual narrative itself. As I have previously mentioned, we do of course have the Gallifreyan characters coming over, which is a very nice reintroduction of them, and I think that it is a good way to fade into the series. But more importantly, Derek Jacobi as the War Master kind of takes a little bit of a back seat, but we still get to see some brilliant moments from him. We get to see him manipulating different characters from Gallifrey, as well as the introduction of a few key characters that will, as a result, go on to be very important, integral parts of the narrative for the rest of the box set itself. But we also get to see the War Master manipulating Gallifrey to an extent that causes ripples in time, and inevitably pretty much the destruction of the universe within the later half, which was a lot of fun to listen to. And I just love the way that the War Master can outwit the Gallifreyans, being the highest of ranks as Narvin, as the main acting deputy of the Celestial Intervention Agency, as well as the president of Gallifrey herself, and I just think that that shows the sheer power of the character. And as I say, it's a good way to introduce the actual box set. You don't get the Daleks or anything like that within this first story. It is solely focused on Gallifrey, and then the War Master going back in time and kind of initiating the grand plan that we see unfold throughout the rest of the box set. The second episode, The Master's Dalek Plan, first of all an absolutely brilliantly titled story, is basically a tribute to Genesis of the Daleks. It is what if you take the Doctor out of Genesis of the Daleks and put the Master in his place, and naturally it turned into an absolutely explosive disaster. We get to see the War Master performing on his highest form, basically. He is taking over Skaro, he is taking over the ranks within the Khaled bunker, and he is reinventing the Daleks to his own wishes and to take hold, essentially, of the universe. And we have some rather brilliant moments of him leading as the new Davros replacement, and we have him basically manipulating the Daleks and manipulating the Khaleds to develop the production of the Daleks themselves, and at the very end we get to see the creation of the Master's Dalek, essentially, which is very similar to Davros's Dalek. However, the actual origins of it are a little bit different. What I really like especially about this story is that it reminds me, as I mentioned earlier, about why the Daleks are so iconic, and I think that one of the brilliant things about both the Daleks and the Cybermen, and something of which is often overlooked due to the sheer amount of appearances that they have with the new series and classic series Doctor Who, is the origin. The origin is the key thing about both the Cybermen and the Daleks. It is the main reason as to why they are so successful. The Cybermen are these characters that are dark, and they've came from the humanoid and their race in the future, and the way that they've developed their body to relate to technology. And then we have the Daleks, which are pretty much space Nazis, and they are extremists, and they are evolving their body once again to cope with radiation and of course the war that they are currently a part of. And this story reminds you of that. It reminds you of the body horror of the Daleks themselves. It reminds you of the evolution of the mutant, as well as the way that the Master has developed the mutant, and in a rather grim way we get to see some rather brilliant moments of people contorting and mutating into the Khaled mutant itself from normal Khaleds. It's very dark, it's very brilliant, and I just love it in many, many ways. We also get to see Gallifrey issuing their own plan to try and stop the Master, which naturally I'm not going to say much about, but it works quite well. It is certainly something that makes sense and once again reflects the plot of Genesis of the Daleks, and is a fun theme, and we get to see a character introduced within this story, well, kind of reintroduced fully because she is also referenced within the first episode, and we get to see her on her mission to stop the Master. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get to know the character throughout the story itself, but also she is a prime victim, I suppose, of the Master's sheer strength, which we'll once again find out more of if you decide to listen to this box set. Episode 3 is Shockwave, also written by Alan Barnes, and is where things start to get a little bit complex, because if one universe wasn't enough to contend with, we now have the breaking into another universe where the Daleks have realised that things are going down and they must stop the Master because the current version of Dalek is kind of being developed and changed from what they originally know. Their creator is now the Master, and not Davros, and that is not good because that is kind of unpure and all of that stuff. So they rely on none other than Mark Gatiss as the Master from the Unbound universe, previously known as, of course, Sam Kisgart, who did, of course, perform alongside David Warner as the brilliant Unbound Doctor from a universe that, once again, I absolutely adore, as the Unbound series with Bernie Summerfield is, once again, some of my favourite box sets that Big Finish have ever produced. So we have almost brilliant strong box set meet brilliant strong box set combined together within this series, so naturally you are going to get a very strong story. I do find that Mark Gatiss's portrayal of the Master is kind of a blend between new series and classic series Doctor Who. It is very traditional in its approach. It's also kind of theatric at the same time because we have his different sort of ways of interacting with the Daleks. However, he's kind of a bit more laid back, very much like John Sim and Michelle Gomez as Missy, and I like that. I think that, once again, if you've not heard Mark Gatiss as the Master within his previous stories, you don't really need to know him beforehand. Once again, this is acting as a very good jumping on point. Shockwave is a story that focuses very much on the timeline manipulation and the different timelines being changed according to the events that the War Master has, of course, triggered many years ago, and for that reason this story is that complex one that at times, I must admit, I did find a little bit difficult to follow. We go back to a more traditional version of Gallifrey that decided not to pursue the time-travelling aspect of life, and they've kind of resorted to a more rural form of life, which is quite interesting to see the different chapters of Gallifrey going off and doing other things, and naturally they've, as a result, they've came out to be not as powerful and are just kind of a humanoid race more than anything that has the capabilities to regenerate. I think that solely due to this story being an audio drama, it can be quite difficult to follow in parts because you have these different scenes hopping all over. You have the introduction of Mark Gatiss's alternative Master, and then you also have the continuation of the Genesis of the Dalek style plot with the Jacobi Master and him continuing his production line of brand new Daleks, and more importantly you start to see flaws in the plan starting to crack, and you kind of start to see the War Master really pushing himself almost beyond his own limits in order to create this specific version of Dalek. But once again, the same complements as the previous story, where we have that continuation of the body horror and the sheer grittiness and grimness of the Dalek origins that is really nicely presented throughout this story, and does really make the Dalek itself feel like a true threat, which is a good reminder considering that this is a Time War focused series. That is what I want. I want the Daleks to be the most feared species within the universe, alongside the Time Lords that have done equally just as flawed things, especially at this point within the Time War, where both of them are almost just as monstrous as each other, which is something that naturally is also reflected within the Time War 8th Doctor series as well as the War Doctor series. And then, of course, we finish off on the fourth and final instalment, which is He Who Wins, as written by Nicholas Briggs. And once again, this story continues the rather complex narrative, however, in a way that is rather nice to understand. We get once again, the Derek Jacobi Master interacting with the Gatiss Master, which is a lovely novelty. I love the way that they bounce off each other, because both of them are simply so different. You have that interaction between the different universes, and them coming together to have two very different plots. And naturally you also have the parallels between the different versions of Dalek and the Dalek Time Strategist coming in as well, and also that continuation of the alternative versions of Gallifrey. And this story is focused solely on the Daleks as well as the incarnations of the Master. Kind of Gallifrey starts to take a little bit of a backseat. So we start off with a focus within the first story on Gallifrey, and then that fades out towards the end, which is something that I definitely think is effective in the case of this box set. And Derek Jacobi once again provides some absolutely brilliant performances as the Master, especially within the opening point of this story. We have him delivering a speech to his brand new fleet of Daleks that have been created, and he feels feels powerful, he feels evil, and he feels monstrous, and it's just superb in many, many ways. And I do not want to say much at all about the series finale without spoiling it, because this is one of those box sets that you need to experience firsthand in order to get the sheer impact of it. However, I don't think it will be any spoiler to say. I will probably put a little mute symbol in the corner if you do not want to hear a kind of spoiler, and that will vanish when I've stopped talking about it, so there's the opportunity now. But there is no coincidence that this box set is focused entirely around the Daleks, and then of course the opening episode of the War Master Volume 1, Beneath the Viscoid, which I do believe is in fact available for free on the Big Finish official website, does also feature Daleks, and in a rather brilliant and satisfying way, the fourth box set links back round to the beginning, which may suggest why this version of the Master at this current point within the timeline is acting almost beyond even his own insanity. He's been driven to a point now where he is almost insane, and now he is almost on the final stretch of his incarnation, and the journey is to the end of his own version of the Time War. And that is that. That is the War Master Anti-Genesis, starring Derek Jacobi as the War Master. Absolutely flawless, superb from both a design perspective. I absolutely love the narrative itself, brilliantly written by Nicholas Briggs and Alan Barnes. From a digital design perspective, I absolutely adore the cover art, I absolutely adore the music score, it's flawless, I absolutely adore the sound design overall. This sounds like a blockbuster. As I said at the very beginning, this ups the level of intenseness and plot and overall chaos compared to the previous box sets, which is what I expect from the War Master, him becoming madder and madder as the Time War pursues. And I suppose the main question is, what is next? Of course, we've just had the announcement of the Masterful box set coming in 2021, featuring the debut of John Sim within Big Finish, which naturally I'm incredibly excited for, and we do also get to see Derek Jacobi within that series as well. And from what I understand, we are going to see more of the War Master in the future. Is it going to be an extension of the series? Are we going to have a further 4 box sets? Are we just going to have occasional box sets here and there? If it was up to me, as much as I enjoy this series, it is one of my favourites of all time from Big Finish. I do not want them to continuously churn it out like how they do with the 8th Doctor Adventures, because I think that has proven over time that quality can wane over a while. Therefore, I would rather them keep it quite sporadic and have one box set here and there, release them every so often, maybe one a year at minimum, and then we still get to continue that incredibly high quality, because I do not want this series to drop in style and performance, because it is brilliant in many, many ways. And that does of course bring to an end the final Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review of 2019, and also brings to an end my only ever, I do believe, birthday filmed review. So it is a little bit of an exclusive first on this channel, one of which I may pursue in the future, but who knows. It's been a delight talking about Derek Jacobi and explosions and death on my 20th birthday. What is not to like? So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, naturally due to it being close to Christmas as well. I hope you have a very lovely festive period. I wish you all the best for 2020, and naturally I hope you stay tuned on the Hus Productions for brand new Doctor Who content on a regular basis. And of course on that note, I will see you all next time. Bye for now.